us go to the Bible now. Exodus chapter 32, from verse 1, the Bible says, "Now, when the people saw that Moses delayed coming down from the mountain, the people gathered together to Aaron and said to him, 'Come, make us gods that shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man who brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him.' And Aaron said to them, 'Break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, your sons and your daughters, and bring them to me.' So all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears, brought them to Aaron, and he received the gold from their hand, and he fashioned it with an engraving tool, and made a molded calf. Then they said, 'This is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt.' All this happened because Moses went to the top of Sinai at God's invitation, and he was delayed in coming down. Now we're going to make a parallel here with what happened in the days of Moses and what is happening today with the people of this world. Nowadays, Christians, non-Christians, the people of this generation, who also have the promise that someone is to return. And many say, because he is delaying, I will do whatever I want. Because what has happened to him, maybe he will not return. Do you know whom I'm speaking of? Jesus. So let us make a parallel here now. Let us make a parallel. Moses' time and nowadays. In Moses' time, the people suffered slavery for over 400 years in Egypt. Nowadays, people have suffered as slaves of the devil before coming to the church. The Bible says the one who loses becomes a slave, a servant of the one who wins. When they lose the battle against their flesh, when they lose the battle against their own evil desires become their master, and they become slaves. And how many of us came to the church like this, suffering in the hands of the devil? The second, the people of Israel in Moses' time, they saw the various miracles and wonders that God performed during their deliverance. The Bible says 10 plagues struck Egypt. 10 plagues struck Egypt. 9 of them only took place where the Egyptians lived. The Israelites, the Hebrew people in those days, they lived in a land called Goshen, which was away from Egypt, from their population. So the Bible says when the water became blood, the water in the place where the Israelites lived, they were clear. They were clear, they were drinkable. When the plagues came upon Egypt, the land of Goshen was not affected. When there was darkness, the Bible says thick darkness that could be felt was only upon the place where the Egyptians lived. In Goshen, there was light, the sun was shining. Life was going on for them. When the frogs invaded the land of Egypt, the land where the Israelites were was not affected by them and by every other plague. The only plague that all the people, including the Jewish people, the Israelites or the Hebrew people, was susceptible to have was the 10th plague, the death of the firstborn. And that's because the only ones who would not lose their firstborn were those who marked their door with the blood of their sacrifice. So now whoever did not have the mark of the sacrifice, of the blood, the firstborn would die. The people of Israel saw God guiding them through the wilderness. When the Egyptians were coming after them, they left after the 10th plague. Now the Egyptians wanted them dead. And the Bible says by night God was a pillar of fire before the people of Israel. So their night was like day. Now the Egyptians pursuing them, even their day was like night, because God was a cloud separating the Egyptians from the Hebrew people. They saw God dividing the Red Sea. They walked. This generation we are talking about, they are the generation that crossed over to the other side of the Red Sea. They crossed over to the other side on dry ground. They were hungry, God gave them manna. They were thirsty, from the rock came water. This is the same people who said, we do not know what is done with this Moses, so make us gods. The same people whom God led out of Egypt, and there was no image leading them. There was nothing leading them but Moses and God. Now they said, Moses is gone, make us God to lead us. They saw miracles, and yet they turned their back on God. Nowadays, they saw the power of God, and we have seen the power of God in our lives and through other people's testimony. Many of you here have shared your testimony previously here, using the blessed water, taking part in campaigns of faith, manifesting your faith somehow. All of you have something to say. God has helped you miraculously somehow. All of us have a story to say. Moses' time, they knew that Moses climbed Mount Sinai, but eventually he would return back to them. Nowadays, they know, or we know, that Jesus went up to heaven and that he is going to return. Moses' time, they lost focus and distracted themselves with the idea of worshiping an idol or idols, as they said, make us gods in the plural. Nowadays, they are getting distracted and begin to seek worldly things. Moses' time, they worshipped the golden calf. Nowadays, they start to worship things, namely mammon, as we're going to see in Matthew 6 in a moment, and fight for more to their pleasure instead of using it for saving souls. Can you see the parallel here now? Let us go to Matthew chapter 6 verse 24. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon or money. You cannot serve both. You cannot serve God and the golden calf. You cannot serve God and live in the world as if God is not in the world, watching your every step. You cannot assume that God is blind to you. He's blind to your faults, but He's aware of the good things you do. God is not blind to anything we do. He sees it all. So Moses went to the top of Sinai at God's invitation. God invited him, he went up. The people were so soon to turn away from him. Jesus died on the cross, rose on the third day, eventually ascended to the heavens. And he left a promise. And the promise is, I will return. And how many people nowadays are behaving like the people in the day of Moses? Even though Jesus said he is returning, because he is delaying in the sight of many, they think it's not going to happen, so they lead their lives anyhow. They follow the pleasures of this world. They make golden calves to themselves. They start worshiping other things. They invest their time. They invest their strength. They surrender their soul. They surrender their feelings to things which will lead them nowhere. Just like the people of Israel, just like the Hebrew people did in the days of Moses. And they do it all because in their knowledge, in their sight, God is delaying. He has not returned yet. But let me tell you this. Even if he does not return in our lifetime, which I doubt will not happen, but even if he does not return in our lifetime, you will meet death. All of us will meet death. It is an eventuality. And how have you been leading your life? How are you contemplating the things of God? The Bible says we cannot be friends of God and friends of the world. Because to be a friend of the world is enmity to whom? God. To have a golden calf is enmity to whom? God. If we go to verse 7, look what the Bible says on verse 7. And the Lord said to Moses, Exodus 32 verse 7 now. And the Lord said to Moses, go get down, for your people, whom you brought out of the land of Egypt, have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way which I commanded them. They have made themselves a molded calf, and worshipped it, and what? Sacrificed to it. Was not enough for them to have given their gold. Was not enough for them to have given their possession to build the golden calf. But on the top of giving their gold, giving their possession, they also took animals and they what? Sacrificed to an image, to a golden image, to Mammon. We can say, they were in the desert. Listen to this. They were in the desert. There was not enough food for them. God had to change the laws of nature and make bread to come down from where? From the heavens to feed them. To feed their animals as well. And what were they doing now? Taking the animals and sacrificing to a golden calf. Sacrificing to nothing. But let us stop and think. Is that not what the world does? They sacrifice their whole lives for what? Nothing. They run a race knowing they will lose. Knowing that one day all will pass. Knowing that one day all will come to an end. In other words, all the efforts they make, all the efforts we make in life will all come to nothing, will become dust. Solomon, at the end of his life, he said, vanity of vanities. It is all vanity. I will have to give what I have conquered to the next man. Vanity of vanities. We live our lives chasing after things, and we get to the end of life. What do we take with us? What do we take with us? Nothing whatsoever. So we look at the people of Israel, the Hebrew people here, and we look at ourselves today, and we have to stop and consider this. We have to stop and consider this, because all of us will come to the end of our journey. The Bible says a man had a great harvest, much more than he could store. Then he said, what shall I do now? He said, I will bring down my old barns, build bigger ones, store all my goods, and have many, plenty for many years, and my soul will rejoice. Then the voice of God to him was, fool, don't you know today your soul will be required of you? And then comes a question, many people don't pay attention. First he said, what you have, whose will it be? And the second question was, what have you prepared for me? Pay attention to this question. God asked it of him, what have you prepared for me? You chase after your dreams, you pursue after your goals, but one day God will ask us, what have you prepared for me? The Hebrew people were sacrificing to a golden calf, sacrificing to Mammon in the middle of the desert, where God had to feed them, otherwise they would have died. But even in the desert, they found means to sacrifice to the devil, to sacrifice to Mammon. And many people say, I cannot sacrifice to God. I don't have the strength. And God says, but you are sacrificing to Mammon. You are sacrificing to the golden calf. You are sacrificing to your family. You sacrifice to your country or for your country. You sacrifice for your future. Even though you don't know whether you will have a future. You don't know whether today is your last day, like what I said of the men. Today your soul will be required of you. And what you have, whose will it be? In the second question again, what have you prepared for me? And that's what God will ask us. Because he sees many times we sacrifice for everything in life. But we don't pay attention to this question. What have I prepared for whom? For God. The Bible says in Luke chapter 18 the following. Luke chapter 18. You can look at the screen. You can go to the screen rather. Luke 18 verse 8 says, I tell you that he will avenge them speedily. Nevertheless, when the Son of Man what? Because he will come back, he will return. This is talking about his return. This is talking about the fulfillment of the Bible. When Jesus returns, will he really find faith on the earth? When he returns, will he see you sacrificing on his altar or on the altar of golden calves? There was an altar to the golden calf where they sacrificed, but there was no altar to God for them to sacrifice. The Bible says God is a jealous God. So he was looking at it and he saw, I took them out of Egypt. I led the enemies to their death. I delivered them. I protected them. And they have made no sacrifice to me. But look what they are doing to this golden calf, which is nothing. So when the Son of Man comes, because to return he will he truly find faith in you? Surely he will see everyone sacrificing. Sacrificing for their goals, sacrificing for their future, sacrificing for their children, sacrificing. But the thing is, on which altar have you been sacrificing? When you hear this question from God, what have you prepared for me? Will you have prepared anything for him? Because he will come. And what will he find in you? Religion. In the world we have a lot of people who come to God, but they stop coming to God and they start going to religion. Do you think religion will save you? Do you think religion is what God is looking for? In the days of Jesus, he saw a lot of religious people and see if he was pleased with them. But then he saw a lot of people with faith. He was pleased with those who were with faith, displeased with those who were with religion. The universal church, not a place for you to find religion. It's a place for you to find faith, because only by faith you will find your home. Come on, only by faith will you find your home. God. You don't find God when you seek for religion. You find God when you seek Him in faith. So when He comes back, will He find you as a religious person or a person of faith? Will He find you sacrificing on His altar or on the altar of mammons throughout the world? Because He will ask, what have you prepared for me? And I ask you this question, what have you prepared for God? Have you been preparing your heart? Have you been preparing your mind? Have you been keeping yourself holy, away from things which are destructive to your soul? When the Son of Man comes, will He truly find faith on the earth? Or like Moses coming down from Mount Sinai, will He see a golden calf and people worshiping gold, money? Jesus said, what is greater, the gold or the altar that sanctifies the gold? What's greater? What is greater for you? The blessings or the one who makes the blessing? Go to His altar and leave every other altar behind. Salvation is only on His altar. Again, you who say, I can't, this campaign is not for me, I don't think I am ready, I don't think I can do it. I want you to remember this. They were in the desert and they were being fed by God. They were being, their thirst was quenched by whom? God. In the end, they found a way to sacrifice to the golden calf. Do you understand what that means? If God would have said, you know what, let us see if this golden calf can give you food, they would die in the desert. Don't despise the preparation for God, because at the end of your journey, He will say, what have you prepared for me? Let us prepare ourselves just like a bride prepares for the groom. A bride does not just put on clothes. It's details. She looks at the details. Especially in those days, there is a whole lot of things to be done before the groom and the bride can become one into holy matrimony. Preparations, details. A bride, she looks at every detail. She prepares every little thing to be perfect. What are you preparing for the groom who will come? Prepare yourself. Prepare yourself. And when He comes, our sacrifices will be exclusively on His altar. No other altar.